It's taken the Tennessee Titans 19 years to get to this point, and it's probably going to get worse. Blaine Kellar, producer Mark Rogers, Wade Neely filling in for the Titan insider Terry McCormick on today's Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. The Houston Texans blanked the Titans 26-0 yesterday in Houston, sending Tennessee and coach Brian Callahan into an 0-4 start. It's the first scoreless game for the franchise since 2019, the first 0-4 start for the team since 2006. Wade, your thoughts?
Thoughts are it is a grim Monday for a variety of reasons, Blaine, and rough. You and I were chatting over the course of the weekend and even in the moments before we got the show rolling. It's tough out here. It's tough out here in these streets to be a Titans fan. And I'm the eternal optimist in the room, but man, it is hard to find a little bit to be excited about after what we saw yesterday and certainly after what we've seen thus far.
We're going to touch on all of what transpired in Houston, get ready for the next one as the Titans are against Arizona. Terry McCormick will share his thoughts from the press box at NRG Stadium on the other side of this break. But before we go, tell you quickly about our sponsor in the Mint Gaming Hall. Circus Sports, the largest sportsbook in Kentucky, is open for business at the Mint Gaming Hall in Franklin, Kentucky. With an 80-foot sportsbook screen and stadium-style seating, the Mint's the place to be for college football fanatics, pro football fans, anyone who wants to watch some professional sports, some college sports. Circus Sports and the Mint are proud sponsors of the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. They're located just north of Nashville, off I-65 North and exit 121. This is the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. We'll be right back after this.
The winning just got closer. All new sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mint Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs. Winning just got closer.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
Deep in a forest at Nashville Zoo, new creatures here for you to view. Phantoms graced in black and white swing high in trees of dappled light. In rocky crags, tall and steep, small antelopes with nimble feet. A wise old man with beard of white, a sentry perched on stony height. Amidst it all, a hunter lies, with coat of gold and steely eyes. A new adventure just for you. Leopard Forest at Nashville Zoo. Open now.
He shoots, and he scores!
If you want the latest in weather conditions, be sure to tune in to our Busy Bee Plumbing Weather Report each weekday on Mornings on Main Street. Brought to you, of course, by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. We will keep you updated on the latest conditions outside, like severe weather, heat, snow, rain, and even hail.
Welcome back into the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast, and here to share a breakdown of the game, 26-0 loss to the Houston Texans, is the Titan insider, Terry McCormick.
This is Terry McCormick for TitanInsider.com and the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast, reporting from NRG Stadium in Houston, where the Tennessee Titans suffered a 26-0 shutout loss to the Houston Texans in a battle of winless teams on Sunday. The Titans, well, they were as bad as the score indicated and then some. One of the worst performances I have seen in quite a long time offensively from this team. When it was over with, Cam Ward, Jeffrey Simmons, a lot of different players voicing their frustrations over how this season has gone now with an 0-4 start, and certainly understandable. You know, from Simmons' perspective, obviously he's been here long enough that he's one of the few guys who remembers what it was like when the Titans were winning, and he's at a loss for words as to why this team simply cannot get over the hump just to make a play or two, not just to win, but to stay in games. He said, you know, practices are good, but the play on Sunday has been terrible. And that was pretty much an across-the-board statement coming from a lot of different guys. Cam Ward was as frustrated as anyone, you know, and that's saying something. Only 4 games in for the rookie quarterback. I think he comes in and expects to put a better product out on the field than what the Titans have been able to do. And he's certainly, you know, taking his share of the blame in terms of why this team's not winning. But honestly, you know, there's not a lot of chance for him to win because he doesn't have a lot of help. He's a rookie quarterback still finding his way around the league. Yes, he made his share of mistakes on Sunday. The numbers were putrid. 10 of 26, 100 yards, and 1 interception on a ball that was thrown too hard to Alec Eilmanter and ricocheted into the hands of a defender. I think the one thing, though, that the Titans may have to do in terms of Cam Ward is turn him loose. Let him have chances to roll out of the pocket. Let him have chances to do some of the things that he did in Miami, because working within the structure of the offense right now is not working because this team can't protect long enough. They can't keep themselves in manageable downs and distances. So what else do they have to lose besides to let a rookie quarterback try and make a play? Last year, they were guilty of trying to make plays too much in certain situations, and it wound up with Will Levis throwing several interceptions on deep passes and on passes that were very ill-advised. They've taken the reins too much on Cam Ward, in my opinion. I think they need to start letting him go and take some of those chances because they're getting precious few big explosive plays. They had 2 on Sunday that were notable: a 21-yard run by Tony Pollard, a 33-yard pass from Ward to Eilmanter, both very early in the game. After that, pretty much shut down, and that's it from here at NRG Stadium in Houston. Terry McCormick for the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast.
So there's a lot to break down there. Wade, I think you first had a very keen observation that Terry was in all black for the funeral setting, perhaps a new low point for this franchise and certainly for covering the team.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. You know, maybe Terry's just a big Johnny Cash fan, I suppose, is another. But, yeah, it was everything that Terry just said kind of was reverberating through my body just watching the game. There were, you know, some spots where you didn't necessarily feel great or feel, you know, extremely confident at any point in the game yesterday. But you're like, okay, that's a little Simon, especially that, you know, early rip down the field to Eilmanter. You're thinking, okay, here goes the offense. But the numbers don't lie, and Cam was not as great, not as impressive, certainly to say the least, as he has been. So even that is kind of a little bit of a sour note because he's been the only real bright spot or glimmer of hope for this franchise for the first couple of games this season. So it was tough. Props to Terry. He's a pro, as you well know, Blaine, and he stuck it out and watched that one on hand, and it was a grueling afternoon. We knew it was going to be an ugly game, I think, going into it. We just didn't know how ugly.
Yeah, talking a little on the offense, and that's what stuck out to me the most is what Terry said. Maybe one of the worst showings he's seen from the Titans offensively, just overall. And he's seen this club since they moved to Nashville, since they came to the state. Bo Hardegree had his first go-around as offensive play caller for the Titans. Terry mentioned those bright spots, the long run by Tony Pollard for 21 yards and the 33-yard reception on the third play of the game to Alec Eilmanter. Both of those plays, the longest pass play, the longest run of the season for the Titans. Start with the good because there's so little of it, right? They had a season low in penalties with 4, a season low in sacks allowed with 2, but they were still shut out, and they only had 175 yards. And perhaps most importantly, Wade, Cam Ward didn't look that good.
Yeah, mentioned in so many words, was getting to that a moment ago. The real glimmer of this whole season, no matter how bad it really gets, is okay, we got Cam Ward, and we'll see what we got in him. And he has shown enough flashes through those first 3 games that even in losing efforts, you're like, okay, we still got our guy. But even
you can have some confidence. You could look back at the tape and say, well, at least Cam Ward looked good. At least Cam Ward had this throw. And outside of the 3rd play of the game, those throws weren't there yesterday.
They weren't there, and I feel somewhat like a broken record because the schedule has been brutal, and the Titans have ran up against some really good defensive units, and the Texans are certainly, their offense, you can say what you will about them, but their defense is still very elite. So take that into account a little bit, maybe lessen your curve you're grading Cam on at the moment, but even the fact that he was not as impressive or as exciting as we had used to seeing the first 3 weeks, that was kind of a perfect summation of what we saw yesterday. Even the one thing, Blaine, that we wanted to kind of get excited about, we really can't this morning.
Hard agree. Of note, taking over the play calling duties as of last week from Brian Callahan. He's the quarterback's coach. And one concern out of the whole move altogether was that you're taking time away, coaching away from Bo Hardegree with Cam Ward. And now he's designating more time getting ready to call plays in the game. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that's interesting. And, that was what Brian Callahan had kind of mentioned. It makes sense. Okay, the head coach does not need to be necessarily concerned as much when we have so many in-game issues, right, that we've seen over the course of this season thus far. Yeah. Okay, remove some of those duties. Let him focus more on head coaching, quote-unquote, duties. The same should apply, in theory, to your point about the quarterback's coach. I mean, we don't necessarily care who's calling the plays as long as you keep developing the QB. If you can pull that off, but doing both at once, okay, cool. But if you're struggling in one, it does make you scratch your head. There's been a season full of head-scratching decisions, and we're just 4 weeks in. So somewhat par for the course, unfortunately, for the team thus far. But that will be an interesting storyline to kind of watch because the sharing of the duties just kind of got pivoted, just kicked the can down the road in a sense, going from Callahan, head coach, to now Hardegree with the development of Cam Ward.
Yeah, and the Titans' main goal for this season, of course, was improvement and getting better and eliminating some of the sins of last year like they talked about. But the most important number one key was that Cam Ward continued to look good, and he got better as the season went on. We're a quarter into the games. Cam Ward is frustrated, as he showed in his post-game press conference, and he has not looked like a quarterback that is getting better week by week.
Yeah, and it was interesting, his post-game remarks, because on one hand, you could view that as a positive. Hey, he immediately was taking ownership, and I kind of chuckled a little bit because he's using phrases, hey, we can't do these things in the NFL. He's speaking as if he's, this established veteran, even though he's just 4 games into his career, which was kind of refreshing and exciting, that leadership in a sense. But also, yes, he did not have a great game by his own measure. He took full, account for that. But you do start to wonder, even for a guy that's kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed coming in, even he eventually at some point will grow weary if the wins and the success kind of don't start coming, or at least development. And that is a real scary proposition if and when that occurs.
And I'll tell you one thing that comes to my mind out of all of this. You use the term bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, just kind of as a cliche. Cam Ward is kind of cool, calm, and collected, and he's shown that throughout his college career. Now we have a guy who's getting upset in press conferences and, kind of breaking out of that mold. That's concerning that just 4 games in, you've kind of tapped out of this cool, calm, never shaken shell that Cam Ward has shown.
Absolutely. And, that is perhaps the real troubling sign, because if he's doing that, or he's potentially showing that publicly a little bit, he's certainly not the only one, and there were a couple of other, and we've seen over the course of even the first couple of games. We obviously have seen Jarvis Brownlee, and that whole trade situation and those kind of public back and forths, if you will. I mean, things are not good, obviously, on the field, but it also feels a little splintered already and kind of just floundering is maybe, I don't necessarily the right term, but it feels like there's no true real direction, or it kind of feels like the team has already kind of lost a hold of their proverbial rope they're trying to on this tug of war for this season. And we're just a quarter of the way in.
Ward, Terry mentioned his stats, 10 of 26 for the game, 108 yards and an interception. CJ Stroud had some really bad passes on his behalf for the Texans. Houston's offense struggled as a whole. They weren't a sight to behold, but finally broke through and got right maybe against this Titans team. It was a 6-0 game at halftime because of two Joey Sly missed field goals. Then Woody Marks had 2 touchdowns in between a grab from Jaden Higgins, the rookie for the Texans out of Iowa State, I believe. The Titans' defense has felt synonymous to last year, where they get short fields or they, have inopportune situations because the offense wasn't producing enough. The defense, for the most part, did its part yesterday, but they were on the field for close to 40 minutes, Wade. So eventually the Texans found a way to break through.
Yeah, you are 100% spot on there because, Stroud, the collective NFL media, if you will, was, not burying CJ Stroud, but everybody's starting to wonder, is he going to be able to recapture that magic that we saw those first, 20 or so games of his career? And, his numbers ended up being somewhat okay and somewhat impressive, certainly by what we've seen from him thus far. But yeah, when you have that many opportunities and you're in kind of advantageous situations, we would hope that you could produce that. I do want to give a quick shout out though. We opened this show by talking, I was struggling to find some bright spots. If you maybe want to dig deep and look, we did obviously see some good things from Jeff Simmons. And I really still think that Tavondre Sweat pairing with Simmons is potentially one of the better interior defensive line pairings in the league. So that has been a real blow for the Titans early. But, even with Sweat being out, Simmons played pretty well yesterday. But Cedric Gray had a great game as well, I thought, for the Titans. He's a guy that just came in last year, a draft pick out of North Carolina. But the fact, Blaine, that we're just kind of hit and miss shouting, one-off kind of individual performances, and that's what we're kind of grasping at straws. That kind of tells you kind of how grim it is a little bit, but that's kind of where we are. We just want to see some develop. We're just starved and itching, if you will, for any signs of optimism right now, unfortunately.
For some signs of life in this team, I think.
Real quick, Cedric Gray was 17 tackles. No other Titan had more than 10.
Most since, and we'll get to this on the other side of our break for our stock report, most since 2012 in a game for the Titans. A couple of guys have had 18 in a game for the franchise before. I said we talk a little bit about the Cardinals, and I wanted to touch on this little bit of research I did, Wade, before we head into our last break on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast.
Hit me.
The Cardinals are up next. The Texans are the team before. These are two squads that in the last 5 to 7 years have had to go through rebuilding phases. They've been in the dumps like the Titans have. There have been some similarities between these two and how they have rebuilt and how the Titans brass wants to rebuild. First off, for maybe Titans fans' relief, lots of turnover doesn't necessarily turn into a ruined quarterback development. CJ Stroud and Houston's franchise had multiple coaches, had David Culley, had Lovie Smith before they got Stroud, now have DeMeco Ryans, but they've changed offensive coordinators in that span. They've had multiple quarterbacks, multiple head coaches, multiple coordinators, and yet Stroud has found a way. He's had a little bit of an up and down season this year, but he's found a way to be a consistent starter and maybe a face of the franchise, a figurehead in the league.
Absolutely. Good stuff there, Blaine.
And then in regard to Arizona, touching on that briefly, the Cardinals, of course, in 2018 drafted Kyler Murray, have stuck with him throughout. They've changed head coaches from Cliff Kingsbury to Jonathan Gannon. but they've changed their philosophy a little bit, not a drafting team, but more of a free agent squad. And I bring all of this up. There's a lot more to get into it than that, but I'll cut it there. Is that the Titans at this point, sitting at 0-4 and 3-14 the season before, have a decision to make with Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi. With Arizona, the head coach and GM were hired at the same time. You have a chance to get a coach aligned with the GM, aligned with the quarterback, and have that synergy from this moment forward, or you can continue to rock with the guy who doesn't seem to have these guys ready to play. All of that to say, the Texans, the Cardinals, and the Titans have all gone against each other or are going against each other. The Titans can maybe take some notes from these two rebuilding teams as they continue their season, as they look for their first win. We're going to take one more break here on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast, give you our stock report after this.
The winning just got closer. All new Sportsbook, the latest gaming machines, live horse racing, and more. The Mid Gaming Hall, Kentucky Downs.
Winning just got closer. He shoots and he scores.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
Joseph Burgoyne, Chef Tornado of the Omni Nashville Hotel. Come see us at Kitchen Notes.
Closing out our Tennessee Pro Football Podcast with our stock report, brought to you, of course, by the Mint Gaming Hall and Iron Steakhouse at the Mint. Be sure to check out all the great food and dining and drink options that the Mint has in Franklin, Kentucky. Again, the Mint proud sponsors of our show. Wade, start us with a stock up.
Stock up. I mentioned his name earlier. I got to bring him back up again, but I was very impressed. We saw him play well in the preseason, and he's even shown glimpses throughout the course of the regular season. But the Titans might have found a nice little piece on their defense in number 33, Cedric Gray. I mentioned the North Carolina draftee 2 years ago, had 17 tackles yesterday. Blaine, 10 of those were solos, and one of those was a tackle for loss. He also had a quarterback rush, a quarterback hurry, if you will. I like what I'm seeing from Cedric Gray, and if we're trying to just look and find something to be hopeful about, the fact, however he fits into your long-term plans, it feels like Cedric Gray is the stock that's on the way up.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The Titans a couple weeks ago brought in Kaiser White from Arizona to maybe challenge at that linebacker spot. They had James Williams in the preseason challenge for that point, but this really felt like a breakout game for Cedric Gray. On the flip side of that, you could also say, well, he was on the field for 2/3 of the game, which is why he got that many tackles. I mentioned the stat, 18, the most by the Titans, Michael Griffin and Brad Cassell in 2012, and then 2005, both members with 18 tackles in a game for the Titans. Great game for Cedric Gray for how long he had to be out there on the field. Stock report and trade stock up on Jeffrey Simmons, it feels like, especially with how fast he was able to break through the line yesterday on that sack of C.J. Stroud. Looked like 4 tackles for loss for Simmons. Again, was out on the field for a long time, but it almost looked like he teleported through the line on that sack of Stroud. And kind of tying it back to my monologue before our second break about rebuilding teams, if the Titans want to draft, develop, and retain, they're going to need to get rid of some of these guys for some draft capital, you know?
Yeah, and Simmons, that's certainly, whether you're a diehard Simmons fan, that's a tough situation to be in, because it's it's a scene from a movie almost, Blaine. You got to give away your one true love, perhaps, for the greater good, if Simmons keeps performing well and if the team's direction kind of keeps trending downward. A face of the franchise and a guy that has really, really been an elite all-pro player, obviously, for this team and this defense. It would be sad if that comes to that, obviously, but it would be potentially for the greater good.
Closing out the show with stock down, it's very easy to look across the board and say pretty much everybody not named Tony Pollard, Jeffrey Simmons, or Cedric Gray had a bad game. The Titans couldn't even get points from their most reliable source on Sunday. Joey Sly has now missed 4 straight field goals. He had 2 long ones against the Colts last week. Then this week missed 2 in the first half. Never had another chance to hit again or try again for the Titans because they never got close. Could be on the market for another kicker down the road when you're talking about that many misses in a row. Wade, close us out with what maybe is a specific stock down.
Blaine, unfortunately, it's tough to pick just one, and man, I hate to say that, but and this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but the stock still kind of has to go down with Brian Callahan, and it's not Brian Callahan so much individual stock down, it's the sense that, okay, we tried to turn over the play calling duties. I can see the wheels turning, and I respect the move and I respect the effort, but grasping at straws, it feels like every decision he makes, whether it's his fault or not, unfortunately is coming up bad luck. And that does not bode well, I don't think, long term. And unfortunately for Brian Callahan, they may not bode well medium term or even short term, So it's an easy pick, and I hate to do it. But, man, I feel bad for him because you could see the wheels turning, like I said. You could see him just trying anything to get the team going in the right direction. Unfortunately, none of it is working, and we know how that usually ends up. So I hate to give it, but stock down for Callahan.
Callahan, 0-4 this season, 3-18 overall as a head coach. Wade, you're filling in for the Titan Insider, so I've got to put you on the spot here. Does he make it past Vrabel and the Patriots in a couple of weeks?
If you put me on the spot, prisoner of the moment, I'm going to have to say no, and I'm going to tell you why, Blaine, just because we've talked about it and you've heard it obviously so much. That's the one game and the one team, being the Texans, that is. There's so much history between those franchises, so much animosity between those franchises. When you go and lose, that's bad enough. When you get shut out, the Texans' first shutout since 2010, by the way, when that happens in embarrassing fashion like that, it's easy to say that he may not even survive this week. 2 ways to look at it. Do you really, if you're the ownership of the Titans, do you even want to run the risk of him still being your coach when Vrabel and the Patriots, who suddenly look a lot better through the first couple games this season, do you even want to run the risk of the embarrassment factor that might come if a beatdown were to occur from that team in your building in a couple weeks? I think a decision comes either this week or maybe next week.
Wade Neely filling in for Terry McCormick, Mark Rogers behind the screen, Blaine Kellar, thanking you for joining us. The Pro Football Podcast. Stay tuned to our coverage on TitanInsider.com, on Main Street Nashville, and on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast next week. We'll see you then.